So, welcome to Belfast Wheel. My name is Jonathan Watson, and today's guest is Bridget Finklaire. Bridget is an author and spiritual teacher with almost 30 years' experience. She is a qualified and experienced psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and healer. Bridget worked as a professional therapist in London's Harley Street. She left England in 2012 for Cape Town, where she resides now, and lives with her South African husband. Her latest book, Red Dress, is out on August 1st. I have seen on Amazon July 30th, so hopefully I've covered enough dates. So, Bridget, thank you for coming on today.
Jonathan, thank you for having me. It's absolutely lovely to be here with you.
No, thank you. So Bridget, your new book, Red Dress, it's obviously a book about a lady who lives in London, and couldn't help notice her story is quite similar to your own. Is it? And you were obviously working in London, and then you moved to South Africa in 2012. So was there kind of is it in a way kind of like an autobiography, but told through the eyes of a fictional character?
Yeah, in many ways. The event, there's lots of things that are similar about the character Katie to me. She's in London. She's got markers of success, but she feels quite empty about that and realizes that's not what success is. She's lost herself. And she's a psychotherapist. And I do have two children. I did live in London. I did have that kind of life. So there's a lot of the events of the life of Katie, which loosely follow my own life. But at the same time, she is a fictional character. She's just dipping her toes into this alternative spiritual path. And she's quite doing that with trepidation. She's not sure. She's sitting on the fence a bit. Is this all a load of rubbish or is it okay? Whereas, in fact, I've had a spiritual journey for about 30 years. So there's lots of things she does that are not really me. There's maybe parts of her that are me. There's parts of her that were maybe me 20 years ago. And then there's also parts of me in some of the other characters in the book. There's she's a therapist, and as a therapist, you have to have your own supervisor. And her supervisor in the book is a guy called Terry. And there's lots of bits of me in Terry. And then she's got a best friend called Shanti who knows anything about everything spiritual. And there's a lot of me in Shanti as well. So they are characters in and of themselves. They're fictional characters. It is a fiction, but there's a lot of truth in there. So someone was asking me this the other day, because she's going on a spiritual journey. A lot of the things that she does are real things that the reader can do if they feel inspired to do that. So she meditates, and it even explains in the book how she meditates, not in a great long-winded way. It's a simple couple of paragraphs that explain what she does in meditation, and you can follow that. She goes and does a thing called aura soma. That's a real thing you can go and do. So everything in the book is actually authentic, and you can do it and follow it as a spiritual journey, or you can just take it as a fun read about this kooky woman who's searching for something, really.
And the story for the book, obviously, as you said, you've based a lot of it from your own life. Was it something that you always kind of planned to write? Was it a book that you always had kind of outlined in your head, and fancy thought, I had to sit down and write this?
Normally, I think most authors do say that, and actually, I'm one of those people who's not been in that. I'm not one of those people who've thought, "Oh, I've got a book inside me and I've got to write it." In fact, I was dragged kicking and screaming to write this book. What I really love to do is teach spiritual work, and even as a therapist, I was really teaching people how to be different in their lives, if you like, or teaching them how to overcome problems. But I worked in 2012 before I came to Cape Town. I did a whole training in my intuition to willfully and purposefully tap into my intuition. And I wanted to road test that. I'm one of these people that along the way, I've picked up lots of tools in the box, if you like, both therapy tools and alternative and spiritual tools. And I always like to test them to the max. And so I was learning this thing, and I wanted to test it to the max. And that's actually what led me to Cape Town. And when I got to Cape Town, I was kind of burnt out from being in London. And I just relaxed on a beach for a couple of months because I really had to sleep and just, I was on the edge there. And then once I'd kind of found my feet, it became more obvious as I was tapping into my intuitive wisdom that I needed to write a book. Well, a while back, before I'd left London, I had a very good spiritual friend who used to say to me, "You're going to write a book, you know." And I used to just think, "Oh, just don't take it." She's one of those friends, lovely, bless her, lovely, but no, she's off on this one. But it was always sort of nagged at the back of my mind that I was going to write a book. And I always thought it was going to be one of these kind of how-to books, because there is a lot of spiritual wisdom along my path, and a lot of wisdom around healing, if you like, and therapy and working with people. So I wanted to felt I was going to write that kind of book. But no, as I tapped into the intuition, it was, no, you're going to write a novel, which was really scary to me, because I thought, I've got no idea about how to write a novel. So it wasn't something that was planned in my head at all. It was something that was intuitively guided, that I was kind of very resistant to at first. In fact, I put it off for ages. There was all kinds of interesting things, like, for example, another friend of mine, once I moved to Cape Town, I'd lived here for 2 weeks, and I was living in a place called Komaki, which is a beach place, a surfer's dude place, down on the peninsula, and I was just chilling and resting from being burnt out. And I had this kind of Skype call with a friend of mine who was in Australia at the time, and we were just catching up, and he said to me, "You're going to write a book." So again, somebody else telling me I'm going to write a book, and again I dismissed it. And within an hour of that call, it was in the middle of the day, because time difference with Australia. Somebody knocks at my door. Now, bear in mind, I don't know anybody in Cape Town. I've just arrived from England. And I look out the window, and this guy seems okay. I open the door, and it's my neighbour from across the road. He said, "I'm your neighbour from across the road. We're having a braai this evening." Well, a braai is like a barbecue. He said, "It's my wife's birthday. Would you like to come over?" I said, "Yeah, thank you very much. It's fantastic. I've been invited to a party, and I've been here 2 weeks." So I turn up at 7 o'clock or whatever with my bottle of wine for this braai, and it turns out that the wife is an author, and everybody there is either a writer or an author or a publisher or an editor, and 2 of the guys there taught creative writing at Cape Town University. And I just thought, okay, the universe is speaking to me here. I've got to do this. I delayed for another 6 months, and eventually sat down, and the first draft manuscript was written intuitively. It's literally go into a meditative state, tap into my intuition, and I heard a voice within my head go, "Open your eyes and start typing." And I started, and it was set in London, woman who's stressed out. She's a therapist and thinking, this is too close to the bone. I don't want to write an autobiography. Carried on writing. I just got, no, keep writing. Wrote for about 3 hours, went out for a walk on the beach. It was winter, windswept, freezing cold. June, because we're the opposite way round to the Northern Hemisphere. I'm walking on this windswept beach. I'm the only person there. It's that Mad Dogs and English Women go out in the Cape Town rain, there's this gale force where the ships go aground, and I'm walking up this brisk Atlantic breeze, and I'm walking down the beach, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I called the character Kirsty after a friend of mine that I'd been talking to that day, and I thought, I've got to change her name. And then I kind of thought it through, and I thought, okay, no, let's give this character a life of her own, and let's make this really characterize people, and let's weave in some wisdom and some pearls of wisdom and the spiritual path for this character. And it can be loosely based on the events of my life, but let's give it some fiction. So, and then there was a whole load of rewriting that had to be done 2 years later, because it wasn't really structured as a book. So yeah, it's been a whole journey.
Yeah, so what in all, it was maybe like a 3-year kind of journey of writing and going over it again, is that right?
It was actually longer than that in total, because that initial writing started in 2013. I'd been here almost a year. And then it got put off, and then you'd write it, and then, I ended up meeting the man who was to become my husband, and wanted to go out and see people and do things. And I was working as well, still as a therapist and also a coach, and working to coach people intuitively. So I was only writing. I wasn't writing full time, and then that went on for about 2 years until the first manuscript was ready. And then actually I wasn't well. I went through menopause and I wasn't well, and I kind of burnt out again. And also I got married, and then we built a house, and so everything kind of went on hold for about a year. And then once we'd moved into a house, I thought, I've got to start writing, doing this properly. And I managed to get a publisher, John Hunt Publishing, and they were brilliant, because they took me on, and they said, we love the story, we love the writing style, but it's not structured properly as a novel, and you need to really learn how to do that. So I had to go away and learn about plot points, and I've written in my life, but not a novel, not fiction. So it is written in a different way. So go off, and it was a big steep learning curve for me, but it was enjoyable. And then I had to rewrite that entire thing. So it actually worked as a book. And that took me another 2 years. So probably sort of like in total about 7 years with the bits in between and the different writings. So it's been a long time. And then it takes quite a while to actually get it to publishing. So it's it's tremendously exciting. And as you said, it's actually out on August the 1st in America, and in England and UK, it's out on the 30th. And I think the rest of Europe, it's 30th of July. So slightly different launch dates.
Yeah, because I found watches, I get an email from your publisher saying this is the release date, but then I was kind of researching for this online. I happened to notice on Amazon, said 30th of July. So that's good. Obviously, you lived in London for a while. What was it like making that decision to move away from? As you kind of pointed out, that you were doing very well. You had a successful practice. I suppose a lot of people go. It's a kind of like a lifestyle people kind of strive for. It's kind of like on billboards. This is the kind of life you want to go for. How difficult was it? What was happening that kind of made you think, I want to change things? I want to switch things around?
Great question, Jonathan. There's actually a bit of a lead up to that. So there was a point in around 2000s, really, that I was living that very kind of successful life, as you said, that billboard thing that people are going for. And like Katie in the novel, I really was out of place and out of time. I wasn't with my tribe, if you like. I didn't resonate with the life I was living, and it felt hollow, and I felt empty. It didn't feel fulfilling. And I actually did, my kids were teenagers then, and I did go through a divorce, quite an acrimonious divorce. My children came to live with me for a while. They went off to university. In fact, my daughter left home because she's a little bit older, and she went to drama school. My son went to university up in Nottingham, and that's when I moved to Cape Town. But there was a kind of a whole kind of period before. So there was this whole transition from that life that really Katie in the book is living to me actually finding myself and going, no, this is not what I define as success. I want to follow and pursue what's right for me. Then there was that transition period. And then, as I said, I was doing this training in my intuition, and it came up to go to South Africa. And at first I thought, I was going to go on a holiday. And my diary was really busy. I was very successful in Harley Street. I had a waiting list even. And as a self-employed person, if you don't block off time in your diary, you'll never get away. You just constantly work. So I thought, well, I've got to block time off to go to South Africa. And the first opportunity I had would have been sort of June, July in 2012. And I thought, no, well, that's going to be the middle of winter. I don't want to go then. I want to go at least in spring. So I blocked off time to go in October at the end of this training course, which was 9 months. And that finished in September. And I thought, great, that will be finished. I'll go to South Africa on holiday for 3 weeks in October. I'm exhausted anyway. I can lie on a beach and do nothing. The kids will be at university. And then as that year unfolded, it became obvious I wasn't just going to come and to South Africa for 3 weeks holiday. I was going to come in here and live. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying because it felt as though I was giving up, a very successful practice in Harley Street, in which had taken me years to build that up and actually get to Harley Street and then make Harley Street work. And to be at that pinnacle of my 10,000 hours as a therapist, it felt very, very scary to give that up. It felt very scary to give up my London flat. Which I loved, and my friends in London, which I'd known for years, and my family who are not in London, but not far from London. And it just felt incredibly scary. It felt, in fact, suicidal. It felt like I was completely ruining my life. But I really wanted to see what would happen if I followed my intuition. So I kind of put some safety things in place. And what I did is my kids were at university, so they were taken care of. That was fine. Got them settled. I rented out my flat initially in London. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Cape Town, and I've only got a 3-month visa initially anyway, so I'm going to come back to London. So I arrived here in October 2012, and I went back for December for Christmas, for a family Christmas. And I thought, if I don't like it, I don't have to go back. I can all sorts of options are open to me. Either I can travel, or I can go live somewhere in the country and, on the rent of my flat in London, or I can even set up again doing something else. There's all sorts of possibilities. So I've got nothing to lose. Well, by the time I went back in Christmas, I loved Cape Town. And I said, no, I really love Africa. I'm going to go back. And of course, it's still like 9 years on now. I'm married to a South African. I've built a house here and I've got friends here and I love it. I absolutely love it here. I love the country. I love the land here and the people here. So I'm here. But it wasn't something that was easy. And I think this is an important thing for people to hear, that sometimes you have a dream or something you want to do, or you're called to do something, and it is going to be scary. But that's where the magic happens, when you step outside of that comfort zone. And I liken that to the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Like any kind of film like Star Wars or The Matrix or, Lord of the Rings, they have to go on this journey and it's scary, but the gold that they get from that is wonderful. And so that's my story of coming to Cape Town.
I think that, because I've seen that in your own experience, but I've also seen it others. You often find, I know a few people who were wanting to kind of create a new life, but ultimately, and again, I don't mean this, I'm not saying this in a kind of mocking way or judgmental way. The fear kind of won out. Unfortunately, I know one person who was able to go away. I think just the impact. I think maybe you kind of eased into it. He kind of went in head first, and ended up having to come back. And I think just the fear and just that change in life, I think kind of was maybe a bit too much. Kind of, instead of like taking a sip of it, they took a whole gallon. What would that be something that you would recommend if you are feeling that fear, that kind of, because we're talking about the hero's journey, there is that kind of resistance where the character who's on this journey, often the old life calls them back. What kind of advice would you give someone who's maybe wanting to kind of go a different direction in life, or start a business, move to another country? How do you manage that trepidation, that fear?
That's a brilliant question. And a lot of that is covered in the training that I do called the Bone Circle. But in a nutshell, I think the first thing is, if it's true for you to do it, and you'll know in your bones, there's a gut feeling and that it's true for you to go and live in another country or start a new business or whatever it is, go around the world on a yacht or something, whatever it is that's your thing. If it really resonates with you and it rings true in your bones, stick with it like a dog with a bone and dream big, and go for it. So that's the first thing. But also realize it is a hero's journey. You're not going to just jump straight into that life. There is a process. It took me 9 months to wrap up my life in London, resign from Harley Street, make sure my clients were okay, make sure my kids were okay, rent out my flat, and then eventually come here. And it's taken me 7 years to write this book. Things don't happen. It's that 10-year overnight success thing. So if you've got a big goal, a big dream in life, don't give up on it, go for it, but also be aware of where you're at in relation to the goal. So the goal might be over here, you might be here. Don't just jump straight in. There's a series of steps that need to be taken, but don't give up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you think about the hero's journey and all of those wonderful films, they never do it alone, do they? Frodo doesn't go off on his own. Neo isn't on his own. He's got Morpheus and all the other characters, Trinity and all of them. So it's very good to have people around you who can support you in that, because there's a lot of people who go, you can't do that. There's loads of people who go, you're going to go live in Africa, it's dangerous. There's a lot of people who go, what do you want to do that for? You're going to miss London, you're ruining your life. There's all of the naysayers, and they're not doing it to be horrible. They're doing it because they love you and they're frightened and they think they're going to lose you as well. But you've got to have a core few people around you that are calling for you and supporting you, cheering you on, and not just in a kind of sitting in their armchair going, oh yes, go and jump off the cliff. It's got to be somebody who's going to walk the path with you and who understands that. And I think the other thing is that there's a very fine line that you walk between feeling fear and understanding that this is a warning sign, because there's a lot of fears, and you've got to kind of work out that those fears are not always founded. They're not a true reflection of reality. It's that, whatever they say, is it false something appearing
false
real?
Expectations appearing real.
False evidence appearing real, or something they say. And a lot of it is that. A lot of it is just your own stuff from your past, or from your conditioning, or because you're stepping out the comfort zone. And this is what people don't get. If you're stepping out the comfort zone, you're going to feel uncomfortable. There's no two ways around it. But there's a difference between feeling uncomfortable, as I did, leaving London. I remember packing up my flat, and my heart, the adrenaline was huge, because by then I'd gone too far to turn back. So there's a difference between that and just going, no, I acknowledge that this is happening, but it's not a true reflection of reality. It's fine. And actually, that intuitive gut instinct that something's dangerous, that one you've got to listen to. There are certain things you've got to do along the way. You've got to take inspired action. But ultimately, don't let the fear stop you. Take it step by step. Have people who can support you, and hold the dream. And when I say hold the dream, it's not in a hopeful way. You can't go, I'm going to create this thing I want, and I'm really hoping it happens, because then you're in a place of fear. But if you can step into this vision of what you want, or this dream of what you want, and dream it, literally daydream it, and think, oh, well, what it would be like to be lying on a beach in Cape Town rather than being in busy London. That sounds great. And you go into that vibration and feeling of the thing that you're wanting to create. That's a very big motivator. And again, emotion, energy in motion, and that motion is towards the emotion itself. So if you're in fear, you're driving towards the fear. And if you can try to get into the joy of having, or the excitement of having, the thing that you're setting off to get, that's the thing that pulls you towards it, or pulls it towards you, and then magic starts to happen.
Yeah, because I think that period from going from point A to get to point B, that making that initial move, because again from observing people around me, and even from my own kind of experiences, you kind of you can see where the kind of fear is kind of taken hold, and then because the person's conflicted, that they know I should have pushed through that, they kind of quickly write up a narrative to make themselves feel better. Oh, it wouldn't have worked out anyway, and the market's changed, and people don't want that business anymore, or that country's become more unstable, and maybe invest here. It's that kind of, it's unfortunate. Again, I'm talking about this, I don't watch this, I'm not making fun. It's just, I think it's something to be aware of, and it can be very, that could be the main stumbling block to kind of hold you back. Going into obviously again the character in the book, and about modern life in general, because that's what we're touching on. It's become more and more common for people to feel stuck or empty. A lot of people kind of feel like an emptiness, and maybe it's kind of been emphasized more with what's been happening in the past 16, 17 months. How can you find your true self, and how can you become unstuck? So if you're in a situation like just a job that you hate, you're not getting any satisfaction from, or you've maybe chosen a course in your life to go along, you realize this isn't what I want. I feel like you felt there was something missing. How do you find your true self, and how do you become unstuck?
Yeah, interesting. Hey, I love this. I think it's Stephen Covey who says the ladder's against the wrong wall. So people have climbed that ladder and worked really hard to get where they are. They get to the top of that ladder, they realize it's against the wrong wall. And I think that's the very first thing, is awareness. Because I think that if you're stuck, I call it a treadmill life. You're stuck on your treadmill life. It's very difficult to get out of it. And the more you go into denial of that, and this is a bit touching on what you were saying, people go, oh, well, the market wasn't right, and all of these things, and these kind of reasons why they don't do what they do. And it's because of the denial. So it's because of it's like, well, I've got to keep going because I've got to pay the mortgage, and I've got to look after the kids, and we've got to put food on the table, and we've got to and they kind of feel that they're trapped and locked into that life. And then they'll go into denial about how corrosive it is to them personally. And then that's where all the excuses come in. But human beings are always in conflict, because we're always in conflict between this is sort of what I would call the greater part of ourselves, the soul part of ourselves, that's this spiritual being having a human life, this spirit within us that wants to do things and learn and create and go on adventures. There's that part of all of us. I think we all recognize that. When we're in flow and we're doing what we love. And then there's this other part of us, which is I call the small self, which wants to keep us safe. And so there's always that conflict, and it's which one are you going to let win out? So the first thing is to become aware that you're trapped in a life that you're not enjoying, and admit it and face it. Because until you do that, you can't do anything. You know, it's like you can't change anything unless you go in there. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying, if you're in a room and the walls are green and you hate that green, you've got to go in that room and paint it a different colour. And I love that expression. It's really great. There's another one, like if you're inside the bottle, you can't read the label. So sometimes you're inside, and what you have to do is realise you're inside there. Then you can read the label on the bottle. Then you can change the walls from green. But the first thing is recognising that you're trapped. And then the second thing is the power of choice. Just choosing things really genuinely within the heart, even if it's just I choose to do something that I love, or I choose to have a life that's fulfilling. And then working intuitively is absolutely the best way. And if you're not trained in your intuition in any way, that's fine, because we all have intuition and it's there all the time. And it's about listening to that small voice. And it often happens when you're in the shower, or you're taking the dog for a walk, or you're sitting at the traffic lights in the car and you have these ideas, or get up first thing in the morning and you have these ideas. Write them down, capture them, work with those. That's your intuition guiding you. You can even do things like morning pages from the author's way. That's often brings out things. Or meditation, which I think is probably the most powerful tool for self-development, for a spiritual life. If you can just find time to be still, and you don't have to go and do an expensive meditation course. It's literally, you don't even have to go into a posture. You can sit on a chair like I'm sitting now. My back's not leaning against anything. It's straight. Close your eyes, focus on the breath. If you can do that, even just for 5 minutes twice a day, increase till it's about 20 minutes. You can clear the clutter of the monkey mind, and then you can start to get inspiration, and then you can start making choices. But the choosing is powerful because it opens something up. Because all the time you think, I'm trapped in this life and there's nothing I can do, and I'm feeling miserable about it. You see, you are what you say. You know, this is the story, and whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. So all the time you believe you're trapped and you keep telling yourself you're trapped, you're hamstringing yourself. But the minute you go, I am trapped and I don't like this life, and I'm going to choose to find a way out, and I'm going to choose to find out what it is I would like to do, if you don't know already. I'm going to be led along a path that will take me out of this to something I love. Or if you do know what it is you love, you go, do you know what? I've always wanted to be, you know, whatever, sail the world or start my own business, whatever it is. And you go, I've always wanted to do that. I'm going to choose to do that. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I'm going to choose to do it. And immediately you do that, that prison is open. And you're able to start making those changes. It's not that you're going to give up your job straight away and go straight into that thing and then come out in fear. It's that you're going to open a door somewhere. Like even things like writing for an author. You might not be able to give up your job to become an author, but what you might want to do is go, if you are somebody who's always got a book inside of them and wanted to write a book, is you go, do you know what? I've always wanted to write a book. I'm going to choose to write it. I'm going to put aside Wednesday evening, say, I'm going to watch telly, I'm going to spend Wednesday evening writing. And I'm going to do whatever I need to learn online or books or courses, and I'm going to do that. And then, yeah, that's your first step. And then eventually, perhaps that career, whatever, it doesn't have to be writing, can be anything, can build to the point where it can support you, can give up the day job. Yeah. So sometimes it's a transition. It's not like a big sudden leap. Yeah.
No, definitely, because I think you're saying about not being in a situation and you don't see what's happening. That can be very common. I remember years ago I was training in a certain organisation, and I just happened to be talking to somebody, and they asked me about what I was doing. And I said, I'm doing this sort of thing, but this individual who I trained under doesn't like the fact that I'm doing this. And they kind of went, tell me a bit more about that. And I was wondering why they interested in this. And I went through kind of some of the stuff that's been happening, and turned around to me and they said, "You know you're being bullied." I went, "What?" And the text messages you just accepted. I got a few texts from this coach, and very demanding. And I didn't see it at the time, but when I had another individual who said, "You're being bullied," and I kind of stood back and thought about it. I thought, "You're right. That's what the individual's trying to do." And I thought, well, I think when you sometimes if you have someone who's not kind of vested, maybe like someone who kind of you can trust to a certain extent, and you ask that person opinion, you can probably get a very honest opinion of your situation that maybe you know deep down, but as we said before, you've created this narrative to make you feel good about it. You wrote your own you rewrote the script to say, no, it's not as bad as you think it is, but it actually is. But you've kind of dressed it up to make it look it's not as bad. But no, I think the getting an outside perspective is really important. And then again, as you were saying there, make that transition. Because I think sometimes we kind of have this promised land mindset. If I get this, or if I do this, I'll be this, and everything's going to be good. But as you talked about yourself, it was a slow transition, bit by bit, almost like easing into this. Or I suppose and this has been used a lot, and probably a bit cliched. Take the caterpillar into the butterfly. It doesn't happen overnight. The caterpillar has to eat, nourish itself, and then when it's ready, go into a cocoon, and then after a few days come out as a butterfly. And even then it has to get its wings, I think, dried with the sunlight before it can start flying. So I think that's what people obviously need to kind of bear in mind when they're trying to transition, if I'm right in saying it that way.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I love that thing about the butterfly. And, your friend telling you, that's exactly what I was saying about you can't do the journey on your own. You need other people around you, other people to say, no, you need to take the ring off and whatever it is, you're being bullied. And we do need people around us. We can't do things alone. And I think more and more, actually, as the world is changing and shifting, we need to work together. It needs to be we need to work together and support each other to rise. So yeah, that's a very, very valid point, is to have others around you and to make that slow transition. And also when you talked about, your land of dreams or your paradise world or dreams, it's not to give up on that, but to realize that might take you a lifetime to create it. You might not create that overnight. But if you keep working towards it, who's to say you're not going to create that over time?
Yeah.
No, you might just create threads of it, or you might just be creating one step towards that. I love that thing. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. You've got to take the first step. Often the first step is the hardest. Yeah. But once you've taken the first step, the next step reveals itself. I always used to say to people when they are in my therapy room, that because they'd be scared about doing something, and I'd say, you know what, when you're in your house and it's dark in the middle of the night and you decide to go downstairs to get a glass of water or something, you can't see the bottom step from the top step, but it's there because it's your house and you've been down those stairs before, and you can see the next step down, and all you have to trust is you can see the next step down, and you'll get down to the bottom. Even in the dark, in the middle of the night, you won't be able to see where you're going. And it's a little bit like that when you're creating something that you love or going towards a vision or a goal. Is you might not know the steps to take, and they may not be clear, but they will be revealed to you one at a time, and you have to know that journey is there, just as the stairs are there in your house.
Definitely, I like that. I was watching a video recently, and I forget the guy's name, but he was talking about a temple in India, and he was saying that basically people it was built thousands of years ago. They built from the top down, so they chiseled out. It was a big lump of granite or something, and they chiseled this intricate temple out. So they did it from the top down, and then chiseled away the front bit so you could actually, people on the ground or on the lower level could reach it. And he was saying they had to have that in their head, how they work from the top down, and all they have was hammers and chisels, and obviously an army of people doing that day in, day out. So I think that's a good analogy for kind of, if you have a goal or whatever, just to start working on it and then just slowly work your way down. In your book, as you already mentioned, it mentions various things that the character uses, like meditation, yoga, breath work, etc. I seen one which was quite interesting. What is creating purposefully?
Okay, so the character in the book's not really creating purposefully quite yet, but there is a benevolent voice that's talking to her and trying to train her to create purposefully, and she's beginning to learn. But creating purposefully is really going again into the training that I offer, which is called the Bone Circle. So the premise really, the truth bomb, I guess, is that we're all powerful creators. You know, we're told that we're made in the image and likeness of the great creator, God, divine, source, spirit, whatever you want to call that, the universe. We are made in that image and likeness, and we have the ability to create. And you know, if we look at mankind as opposed to the animals, we create homes, we create cars, we've created everything that's in the world that's been invented has come from somebody's imagination, and someone has made that with their hands, whether that's your phone or Zoom or whatever it is. It has been created, and it has been created from an idea. And so it's not just things like technology, say, that we create. We also create music, we create paintings, we create art. But it's not just that either. You can actually create your life. And we create things all the time, but most of the time we're unconscious. We are not aware of what we're creating. And often people will have patterns in their life. It might be a pattern around money, say, never have any money, they always lose the job. It could be a pattern around relationships. I always wind up with the person who's horrible to me, or I'm always the victim in relationships, or it never works out for me, or, you know, I've never won anything in my life, I'm unlucky, whatever it is. We have these patterns that play out in our life, and actually they are hidden in the unconscious, in the shadow. We don't know that they're there, and they mostly come from conditioning in childhood. And they're incredibly powerful, to the extent that we can create situations over and over and over again with different people playing those parts of the characters, but we create it over and over again, and you'll see it's a pattern, and it's coming from an underlying structure. And this is why awareness is so powerful, and also working with intuition is powerful. So if you're choosing to create purposefully, what you're saying is, given that my unconscious patterns can create situations in life, patterns in relationships, patterns in work, patterns with money. If I can create all of that, and we can create, you know, relationships, houses, homes, jobs, careers, anything, then what would it be like if I chose what I wanted to create? How would it be if I said, this is what I want to create? This paradise that you were talking about, this is what I want to create, and this is why I want to create it as well. I love that why, you know, what is your why? Why do you want to create that? You don't have to get into the how, actually. It's interesting. So if you just know what and why, then you can start to focus on that. You know that saying, where your focus goes, energy flows. And I would say your focus actually creates what is real for you, whatever you're focused on, whether that's unconscious focus or conscious focus. So it's about understanding what those patterns are, revealing what is in the unconscious and in the shadow. So like with your friend telling you you're being bullied, they were revealing to you what was actually happening. So once you can have that revealed to you, you can then go, I don't want to create that anymore. I don't want to be bullied anymore. I don't want to carry on creating this. I'm going to do something about it. And then you're purposefully creating. Similarly, what we've been talking about, if you want to change your career or live somewhere different, or, you know, looking for that right partner in life, or whatever it is, or you want a spiritual journey, whatever it is that sings to your heart, it's really what makes your heart and soul sing are the things to really go for. And once you've kind of worked out awareness of where you're at now, don't really want to create that anymore. What is it I'd actually really love that would make my heart and soul sing? Right now I know what it is. I'm going to choose to create it. The steps will be revealed, and then you're creating purposefully on purpose. And also, it's a little bit of a play on words for me, because when I'm training others to work intuitively, I'm also training them to work with what their soul came here to do. So it's a soul purpose. We've all, I believe, have a soul purpose. It could be something simple. It could be something grand. But we each have a purpose, and that purpose fulfills us. And that purpose is our part that we play in the jigsaw of life or in the tapestry of life. You might just be that one little orange thread in the corner of the tapestry, but without it, the whole tapestry's out. So it's about, as we each fulfill our soul purpose, we're creating this weaving together a new way of being. We're all fulfilled, so there's no need to get into, war and looting that's happening in South Africa right now. Is because of the great dissatisfaction going on there, because of things in the past. And so, yeah, I think as well, your soul purpose, not only is it fulfilling, but you're already born with all the skills to do it. So you might not know. Some of those skills may be latent and maybe they're not. Maybe you're a great musician or something like that, or a fabulous writer or an amazing painter, or maybe you're just great at cooking or inventing things or being an accountant. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be something glamorous. But whatever it is that is your sole purpose, it would be something you enjoy and it would be something that utilizes all your skills, which puts you in a flow state. And it's lovely to be in a flow state because you feel, we've been in the zone. You feel energized by it. You don't feel drawn down by it at all.
So remember, and this kind of will lead into the next question. I've had both men on the show, and I've followed quite. There's Tony Summers and Jeff Thompson, and I think in both their work, Jeff did a documentary, "Embrace Your Fears," and Jeff Thompson talked about this. He says about likes of graveyards, is how many latent talents, gifts, things that could have changed the world went to the grave because the person thought, I'm not good enough, or who am I to create that? That's somebody else's work. I'm not worthy of that. And I think that's quite a sobering kind of reflection, is that as you say, if we kind of sit in our fear and don't allow that to control us, and don't kind of, even just as you say, even like one night a week, work on something that you're passionate about, you could more than likely go to your grave never ever realizing that potential, and it would be a loss to the world. It could have enhanced humanity in a whole different way, and you did, and it didn't because you thought, I'm not good enough, or who am I to be doing that there. So I think it's a very, very, very sobering thought. Going into the next question, and this is quite a big one. I've talked about this before, and I've talked this with another guest, Reverend Bill McDonald, and that episode's going to be going out soon. Spirituality today, I know there's a lot more people I've interviewed people who would say they're spiritual, but not in a religious sense, and they're very open to learning about different religions. They'll talk to different people, and one trying to say is my experience from when I was growing up, and it was just the way I was taught. That would have been very frowned upon. It was like, this is it, and this is the only truth. Everything else is there to kind of take you from that narrow path. Basically, one point is that religion is generally kind of in the West is seen in decline. Church attendee numbers are dropping. I know particular church I went to, I said they're fairly downsized. I think I've seen the magazines recently, and they're like wafer thin, whereas before they were quite bulky, and it's just a reflection of lack of income. I suppose the point I'm trying to say is how can, especially for someone who like myself, I mean, when I started this podcast, I was non-religious. My view was you died, but interviewing different people, I've interviewed another guy called Steve Burgess, you might have heard of him, and I've watched different documentaries, and some of the stuff that I've kind of seen has kind of made me think, well, okay, there's maybe something more going on. So how, long story short, my question would be, how can somebody explore spirituality and reconnect with the divine, or whatever is out there? Where's the best place to start? Especially if maybe somebody's kind of maybe a bit jaded with religion, and there's a lot of controversy going on in Canada with and in Ireland as well, there's been unfortunately mass graves of babies and stuff like that. It's kind of marred religion in a way.
Yeah, gosh, this is a big question, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with religion isn't God, it's the way it's dealt out, if you like, to everybody. Because if you think of God, he's all-encompassing. It's beyond our description. It is ineffable. I think I talk about it in Red Dress, that God isn't some saintly Santa sitting on a cloud judging people. There's a bit in Red Dress that says God is more of a verb, more of a being of light and love and creation and joy. And I think what's happened with all the sort of organized religions around the world is they've all got a slice of the truth. They've all got a slice of the truth. But then what they've done is they've gone, well, this is the whole truth, and this is it, and this is the religion. All of them say the same thing. And if you're not part of this religion, you're not going to be saved. And actually what they fail to see is that all religions have got similar stories, and all of them are worshipping the same God, just in different names with different stories. And that when we can open to that, we can bring back what I would say is the spirit, which has been gutted from religion because it's become very dogmatized. And it's the spirit, which is why spiritual people are awakening to something different. Because for me, that is to be filled with the Spirit, to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is the presence of the divine. So that's the bit that enlightens us, that brings light, that brings joy, that brings love. The dove of peace, even, which we could really do with right now, is all kind of connected to that third part of the Trinity of the Holy Spirit. And so I think that's why people are searching for something spiritual, because the spiritual part of that Trinity, if you like, is lost in many religions. Not all of them, but many of them. So I think that's why people are searching for a spiritual path. I love the concept that think about the divine as being at the top of a pyramid, and at the apex of that pyramid, at the capstone of that pyramid. And somebody's walking up this side and somebody's walking up this side, and they go, no, this is the way. And the other person's going, no, this is the way. And actually, it's all correct. It doesn't matter which path you take, as long as you're taking a path somewhere up you could go up the corner bit, you could go up one side, you can zigzag up. It doesn't matter how you go up the pyramid, as long as you're heading up the pyramid, because when you get to the top of the pyramid, you'll realize that all the paths lead there. So I think that's the first thing to kind of say, is to look at this from that top of the pyramid perspective. And then you'll see the glory and the joy that's in all these different teachings. But if you're wanting to go onto a spiritual journey, onto a spiritual path, in other words, to start climbing that pyramid, the first thing is, again, it goes into awareness. It's waking up to the fact there's more than your five senses. So that's the first thing, is waking up. The same as waking up to realizing you don't like your life and you want to do something different. Is you wake up and you go, do you know what? I think there's more. I don't think we just are born and then die and that's it. I think there's more. I think there's things I can't explain. I mean, I think there's all sorts of phenomena out there. There is more. And that's the very first seed. And then you go, okay, I choose to seek for that. I choose to seek for the light. I choose to find out more. And I think that the minute you go, I want to do this, I acknowledge that there's a divine power in life, or that there's more than just human beings and their five senses. The minute you say, I think there's more, then opportunities come your way to find more, to open up. And whether that's you doing this wonderful podcast and meeting all these wonderful people that's enabled you to open your mind to all these other things, that's the path that has opened up for you. Katie in Red Dress has a path that opens up to her through meditation and becoming a Reiki master. And maybe that's the way some people go. Other people want to go and learn to meditate or become Buddhists, or, look at all kinds of paths. And it doesn't matter which path you're on, because it'll be your path, the one that suits you, the one that's right for you. So you don't have to, do what Katie did or what you did. I think there's a piece in the book that talks about how all the spiritual people are like a shoal of fish swimming on crystal waters. And I love that, because we're like this whole shoal of fish swimming on crystal waters, but we're in different shoals, and sometimes you're going to swim alone, sometimes you swim with others, and we're going to different points along that pathway. Sometimes we might have both read the same book or not, or heard about the same saying. I love the thing about the graveyard. How true is that? So we go to different points, but we eventually get there. So it's just about allowing, choosing, becoming aware, choosing, and then allowing, and then you follow those crumbs. You follow that golden thread, or whatever it is you're following. You follow it, and the next step comes to you. I think there's a lot of power in reaching for that and choosing to seek for that. And a lot of people go within first to seek, but I think it's external and internal. But a lot of people start within, and meditation is a very good place to start. Or just pick up a book, pick up a book. And this is actually why I wrote Red Dress, because there's loads and loads of fabulous, wonderful, great books out there around self-development, personal development, spiritual development, meditation, all of these things. But not everybody wants to pick up that kind of book and put the time into reading it. Not a lot of people don't even want to read a book nowadays, just want to read something on Facebook, feed. But at least Red Dress is a fun, easy to read novel. So this is my aim, is to get people who maybe don't want to read one of those serious books to dip their toe in. And maybe there's something, if there's just one thing in that whole book of Red Dress that just sparks somebody, if they take away one little nugget, then my job will have been done. But I think that's what it is. You've got to find your own path. I just wanted to say something else. I think there's enormous power in actually surrendering to the divine, as you know it, or higher power, or whatever it is you want to call that. And that's part of the 12-step program that people use for addiction. I think it's step 3, is they hand over to a higher power because they admit that they can't handle what's going on. And that's a very, very powerful thing, which is why the 12-step program works. But I don't think you have to be in 12-step to do that. I think anybody can just go, I think there's a higher power, a higher divinity, a higher divine source, a higher spiritual essence, a greater universe, a cosmology, a God, or whatever you want to call that, however you define that. And then you can go, I surrender to that.
Yeah, no,
Sorry, go on.
definitely, because I think from my own journey, and I've seen this. I've seen somebody I know, and I remember they were basically going to a wedding, and it was beyond their Catholic ceremony. I'm not knocking Catholicism here because anyone sends me angry comments, but just one of the observations I seen was this individual was going to be a witness for their sister. They went in to do confession, and when they came out, they were quite upset, and pretty much the priest said, from their viewpoint, you're living in sin. You're not going to. You can be the witness, but you're not to partake in Holy Communion. And my anger, my problem with that was you're cutting, you're in that belief system, you're cutting that person off communion with God. An individual is saying, my view is this, and not letting that person commune with God, and according to them, let God be the judge of whatever. And I think that religion's become very much, again, if anyone knows religion, I'm not being disrespectful, but it's an observation. I see a lot of it's about control. You see a lot of people kind of just going through the motions, go every Sunday, do a lot of gossiping, sit down, flick through the Bible. Yep, yes, agree with that. Go out and then do the exact opposite from what they're taught. They don't take anything in. They don't take any kind of knowledge in or self-educate. And I've seen that myself in my own experiences. You've seen a lot of people who it was a very popular word now to use, optics. They went through the optics of being religious, and they were the counter opposite of that. And I think that's the thing. It's a really deep subject, and it's something I'm really interested in. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of going on here. Again, from interviewing different people, I've interviewed a few people who've had near-death experiences, and when I first came across that I find that quite challenging, because I'm going, really? But when you look into it, there's a lot of there's a lot of tangible evidence there that there's something more going on. And if anyone watches going, well, what do you mean by tangible evidence? There's instances where people were able to recount what a doctor was saying, the type of equipment that was being handed to the doctor, when there was no way for them to know because they were dead or they were out. I think there was one lady who passed away, and she's seen that her husband was eating a Snickers, and she's able to say, "You were sitting outside eating a Snickers." She's like, "How do you know that?" But he didn't know. He was outside in the waiting room. She was in trouble. So there's, I know that again, it's not hard evidence in some ways we want, but again, even if you're scientifically or inquisitive minded, there's something there. There's something going on. I think warrants a deeper understanding, or at least try to understand what's going on. Sorry for
No, that's totally, I agree with you, totally. That some of the near-death stuff is incredible. And I love Dr. Eben Alexander's book, because he was a neuroscientist who didn't believe in anything, and he had a near-death experience, Proof of Heaven. What you were saying about some of the religions, and again, I'm not knocking people. If that's what they want to do, that's absolutely fine. It's not a judgment, but sometimes I observe too that people don't always embody what it is that they're going to church to learn and grow with. So, but yeah, certainly, I think that's a wonderful way of saying, look, there's something more going on. There's now more and more near-death experiences that are being reported. We have to listen to that, don't we?
No, definitely. And there was a show on Netflix, and I forget the name of it, but it touched on, I think, life after death or after death or something. And
was that the one to life, to death and back or something? There was one.
Something like that. But there was a wee boy who was having these nightmares, and his parents were troubled. Both parents were very skeptical, and the father thought the child was having a mental illness, and he started giving details. And I think they were a book, but they ended up becoming that wee boy was remembering his past life as a Navy pilot in World War II. And the nightmare he was having was he was in the plane, he was trapped, and the plane was on fire, and then the plane crashed and he died. But from the information he gave, they narrowed it down to this naval ship. The name was, I think, they interviewed the father, and the father said the name sounded Japanese. He says, that doesn't make sense. If it's an American ship, why would it have a name like that? And he had to kind of go into the archives. It was a very lesser known aircraft carrier, but the ship did exist. And the name the wee boy could remember was on that ship and died. And they took the wee boy to Iwo Jima. That's where his past life, past self passed away. And he became very emotional. But once he got on the beach, it was like that trauma just went away. It was almost like kind of like completing a circle in a way. And that was him. So again, some fascinating stories out there, again, that warrant to take a more of an inquisitive look. And I think also it's you can kind of, like we're talking about falling into traps. I think it can be very dangerous where you can fall into a fixed mindset. So you think to yourself, like, I've categorized, catalogued everything. I know the world. And I know it's very, like, you're something like your lesser self is wanting to protect you. It's kind of like saying, if we know how the world is, then we just get on with it. But it can then blindside you to other possibilities. So,
totally.
Go. So sorry for that big long monologue.
No, it's lovely.
What is you mentioned it, Larry? What is the bone circle?
The Bone Circle is a completely transformative training that I put together. I think I put it together 2017, 2018. And it's basically, it's a life-changing program. And I'm about to completely upgrade it and redo it, because I used to teach it in person, and with these interesting times we're going through, that doesn't really work. So I need to get that now online. So and at the moment I'm dealing with the launch of Red Dress. But when it comes back online, there will be, I think, 5 different sections to it. But it helps people to create the life they'd love. It helps people to create that paradise of dreams. In fact, we have a thing on the final, the 4th level of training called Gift of Life, where you receive the gift of your true life that you've come here to live, which is just an amazing thing. But it helps people to create what they love according to their soul purpose. And everything within that training is drawn from different experience that I've had. So there's the experience of being a therapist and a psychotherapist, and also doing, by the way, past life regression and hypnotherapy and stuff like that as well. So there's a kind of therapy and healing stuff, which is basically about healing the past. And as you said with that little boy, you know, once that was resolved, it closes that down. It closes that trauma down, and he's able to move forward without it. But it's not just past life; it's also this life. We've got, you know, people have got a mixture of things from past life and this life, and so it brings in some of that, which is about healing some of the worst traumas of the past, which might be holding us back going forward. And then it brings in sort of sacred wisdom teachings and stuff like being fully present and meditating and working a lot. I work a lot with sacred names and sacred chants that raise vibration, smudging rooms and clearing space and those sorts of things, which really are about being in the present, being fully present, being in the now. And then the other part of it, which is a huge part of the training actually, is working with intuition and creating. So it's, how do we create purposefully? How does that mechanism work? How do we tap into that intuition at will to find out what our true north is? Because for me, that's what the intuition is. There's a wonderful quote by Einstein that says, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honours the servant and has forgotten the gift." And it's exactly right. And it's what you were saying earlier about, oh, I know that now, being the closed mind syndrome. It's like, I know that, I know how it works. And then there's no opening for something new to come in. And that's the rational mind. And the intuitive mind is the bit that opens up and goes, hey, there might be something else out here. And it's the intuitive mind that's creative. And so when we jump into working with the intuitive mind, we can start to see what's really true. So that ladder that we're climbing is now against the right wall. It is what we want. It isn't that successful life we thought we wanted and got there, and it isn't the right thing. So the intuitive part of it is powerful. And then how to create, you know, these, we've been talking about it a lot, those different steps that we take and doing it with other people. And the point of the bone circle is that it's the circle. So in a circle, there's no hierarchy, that everybody's equal in that circle and everybody's of value in that circle. And as a circle, you help each other within that circle on that journey. You know, when it's scary or when somebody's being bullied, you go, hang on, I think that person's bullying you, you need to get out of there. So there's a lot of cross, sort of coaching within that circle. And the reason it's called the bone circle is it's going down to the bare bones. So it's which is the structures underneath. So we strip away what that small self thinks. Oh, I think I know everything. So that we can rebuild from the bones of who you really are, your deeper self, what it is you'd love. So we're looking at healing the past, being in the present, creating the future purposefully. That's what the bone circle is about in a nutshell.
Oh, excellent. I know we're running to the end of the time, and I know before we start recording, I asked you about coming back on, and definitely we'll have you back on because there's a whole lot more I think we can deep dive into. What's next for yourself? I know you're obviously promoting the Red Dress book. Is there any other books in the works or anything like that?
Yeah, there are, and also I'd love to come back again. That's fabulous. I've so enjoyed today. So what's next? Well, at the moment, my mind is like focused on the launch of Red Dress. I also teach a spiritual, apart from the Bone Circle, I also teach, which I don't charge for or anything. I teach a spiritual thing called the Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch. And at the moment, that's taking quite a bit of my time because we need a lot of spiritual work and a lot of prayer and a lot of working. We work a lot to sort of raise vibration. So that's taking up time, and it will always be there. It's one of the great joys of my life. Though I'm about a third of the way through the sequel of Red Dress because it's actually part of a trilogy. So the sequel, I need to get back into writing it. I haven't written anything for months because time's been taken up with other stuff. But I'm about a third of the way through that. And then there's a third book. Now, as it loosely follows my life, the third book will be her coming to Cape Town and creating the Bone Circle. So the Bone Circle will actually end up coming into that third book. And it kind of follows how we create our lives and what we've been talking about, because Red Dress is where she realizes, that's where she wakes up to the fact her life isn't what she wants it to be. She realizes something's wrong. So she does exactly that. She becomes aware that her life's not right. She decides on a spiritual journey. She decides to do something about it. And that's what Red Dress is really her journey to to overcome where she is. But the second book is much more about those old structures. There's a lot about structure that I work with. Structures are really powerful and important, but there's she starts to break down the structures, the dysfunctional structures that created that problem in the first place, and to create new structures that support her. She comes out at the end of the book triumphant and in her power and knowing who she is and what she's about and loving her life. And that's for her true success, not financial success. And then the third book, as I said, we'll probably see her coming to Cape Town and working with an interesting group of people. So we'll see. Also, there is a possibility that I will write a primer for the Bone Circle called The Bone Circle, which will be a factual non-fiction book. And on top of that, I really want to get the Bone Circle training up online, which means developing a whole website and recording all the stuff online and working out how we do all of that online, because a lot of it is interactive and practical. So you need to kind of be doing that with someone you know, or hook up with someone you know in your area. There's practical, very, hands-on practical exercises that you've got to do. So I've got to work out how we do that online and how I support people on that. So I suspect that's quite a big project. So that's also in the offing. And sometimes I think, I'd quite like to retire, but I don't. I think upstairs, as I call them, upstairs, the divine has got other plans for me. I shall keep going as long as I can, because we're living in interesting times. And I think, I really believe, in this, as things go to chaos, it's the chance for the phoenix to rise from the ashes and for us to collectively create something much better that's supportive of everybody.
So definitely. I think if you look throughout history, there's cycles of that, of order, structure, and then chaotic, and then repositioning of things. And I know sometimes, and even myself, you think, geez, it's getting worse and getting worse, but it's actually it is getting better. Compared to even 100 years ago, world's in a far better place than it was back then, at least. That's the way I kind of look at it. Bridget, just to finish off, I often ask my guests this. What is your mission statement? If you were to have to write it down in a book, or
on my website, I always say "Love is the way." Love is the way is the name of my blog, and it's also the name of my newsletter. Is Love is the way, and I really do believe that love is the way. So you do what you love what you do, love the things that you create, love the people around you, and it is true that love heals everything. So love has got to be the way. Whatever it is you're doing, wherever you're heading, love is the way, and that's my mission statement. And I also talk about my why. So my underlying motivation for everything I do is always about positive transformation. So, and love is the way to that positive transformation. And a lot of that starts with yourself. A lot of people on the spiritual journey love everybody else and do things for everybody else and don't love themselves, because it comes back to what you were saying earlier about the people in the grave. They go, well, who am I to do that? And I'm not good enough. And so a lot of people turn their love outwards, especially spiritual people, but don't embrace and love themselves. So I think sometimes that's the first thing we've got to do, is to love ourselves. But certainly we love ourselves and love others and love the world, and with a view to positive transformation.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you. Bridget, thank you very much for your time. Just if anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Best way to find me is probably on the website or social media. I've got a very unusual name, Bridget Finklaire. I'll spell that for everyone. I'm sure you've got it on the label at the bottom here, but Bridget. And then my surname is F Freddie, Inklaire. The website's www.bridgetfinklaire.com. And then you can find me under that name on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. So please do go to the website. It's got more information about the book. There is a mailing list you can sign up to where I'll be sending information about the book launch. And if I'm coming over to Europe, which I hope I might do, let's see how things play out in the world. But if I do get over to Europe and get over to England later in the year, I may be doing some signings, and I'll tell you about that, and I'll tell you about the book and the Bone Circle. So please go to the website and sign up. And if you want to get hold of the book, you can go to johnhuntpublishing.com. You can buy it there, or you can buy it from Amazon, Waterstones, normal bookshops.
Yeah, no, that's grand. Bridget, thank you so much for your time. And again, looking forward to having you back on again. But thank you for sharing your knowledge and your own story, and good luck with the book release.
Thank you so much. It's been my absolute pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you, and look forward to talking to you again at some point.
Yeah, thank you.